Hey everyone, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Keisha and today I'm going to be giving you some spooky middle grade book recommendations. So if you've been around on my channel for a while, you will know that spooky middle grade books are some of my absolute favorite, and it is the perfect time of year to give you guys some recommendations. I know everybody has been looking for some great fall reads and spooky books, and I did want to do a dedicated video just for spooky middle grade books. So the books that I'll be talking about today are some of my favorite spooky middle grades. I'm so excited to share them with you, and hopefully you can find some to check out this spooky season. So first off, I want to start off with some books that are a little bit lighter on the spooky and just more on the fall, autumn side of things. And the first book that I want to talk about is The Field Guide, which is book 1 in the Spiderwick Chronicles by Tony DiTerlizzi and Holly Black. So I watched this movie a few years ago, and I've watched it a couple of times since then. I thought it was fantastic, and I knew there was a book series, but I'd never read it, and I didn't know if I would ever pick it up. But I ended up picking it up, and I do have the stack back here, and if you just look, they look really autumnal if you look at them anyways, and they have leaves on them, and it just, I don't know, whenever I think of this story, I think of fall. So this story essentially just follows 3 children who have moved into this new home, this new old home with their mother, and they find out there's some pretty creepy things going on, just some things that are a little off. They end up finding out that there is a society of creatures that live beyond their walls in the forest. They find this field guide to magical creatures, I think is what it was called. It's been a minute since I've read it, but they find this field guide that is written by Arthur Spiderwick, who used to live in this house, and he died or disappeared many years ago. And so they end up finding out that, like I said, there's these creatures that live around the woods, and there's one creature who knows that they have this field guide, and they don't want the world to know about this society, or they don't want everybody to kind of know how each of these creatures works. And so this one creature named Mulgarath is coming up against these children to try to get this book, and I don't know, it's just very fall to me, and it's very fantastical and whimsical and a little bit creepy at times, but it's so good. It's put together really well. The artwork in here is incredible. I just think, I don't know, these are just very underrated in my opinion. I gave the whole series 4 stars. I highly recommend reading them and watching the movie. The two are a little bit different in how the story goes, but both are absolutely phenomenal, and I highly recommend them for fall. The next book that I want to talk about is The House with Chicken Legs by Sophie Anderson. I have not talked about this book in a while, but it is one of my absolute favorites. It's a 5-star read for me all the way around. This story follows Marinka, and Marinka is Baba Yaga's granddaughter, and she lives with her Baba Yaga. If you know anything about Baba Yaga, you know that Baba Yaga is a Russian folktale, and she tends to live in a house with chicken legs. And so Marinka is living with her Baba Yaga, and she is learning all the responsibilities of being a Yaga, but all that she wants is to be able to leave her home and explore the world. She's tired of living in a house with chicken legs, and she wants to be able to kind of, well, I said she wanted to explore the world. She wants to stay in one place for longer than her house wants to keep her there. She wants to make friends. She wants to live her life. She wants to be a kid, you know? And she just feels like she is not able to do that living in this home. So she takes off on an adventure, but the house has other plans. Marinka, this is like kind of a coming of age story. Marinka learns a lot about herself, about her family, about life, and she meets some new friends, and it's just, I don't know, it's really heartwarming, and it's beautiful, fantastical. I love the illustrations in it as well. The book is beautiful in and of itself. It also tackles some things that I think would be really great for like middle grade readers. I have had some friends that have told me that they felt like that it didn't really resolve itself. There wasn't a lot of character growth with Marinka, but I would disagree. I think that Marinka is, I think she's like 12, and she's very much in character for a 12-year-old, and what she's having to go through and the things she's having to experience is very specific to her in some instances, and I think that her character growth is just going to take a little bit more time, but I do think there is some growth with her character throughout, and the way that it ends, it was really sweet. I loved it. It's just, it's so good. Please pick this up. Sophie Anderson has a couple other books that I've been meaning to read, but this is my absolute favorite right now, and I am so excited to hopefully reread it again in the future. I've been wanting to read it with my middle grade book club, so hopefully they'll pick this out in the future and we can read it together. Let's switch it up a little bit and do a creepy book. So this should come as no surprise to you guys. There's a hint on my shelves at what I'm about to talk about. Coraline by Neil Gaiman. So you guys know that Coraline is one of my absolute favorites. I actually looked on Goodreads and I only rated this book 4 stars, but I think it's because I watched the movie first and the movie just adds a little bit to it, and I am a little bit partial to the movie, but the book is definitely super creepy. I have watched the movie, I've read this book, which is the original book, I've read the illustrated edition, I've read the graphic novels, and I've also listened to the audiobook, and I would have to say that the audiobook where like there's mice in the story and they sing this creepy song is just, it makes your skin crawl. So please, if you read this book, if you've never read it before, I don't care which version you read, but whatever you do, like if you read this one or the illustrated, read it with the audiobook alongside it because it just elevates the creep factor. The movie's super creepy. Anyways, let me tell you what this is about. So if you don't already know, this is a story about a girl named Coraline, and Coraline has just moved into a new flat with her parents, and her parents have kind of been a little distance from Coraline. She doesn't feel like she's getting a lot of attention with this move. She's not really happy with the move because she's left her friends, and she just feels a little bit alone in the world. And so she ends up finding this door that leads to the other side of her flat, or the flat on the other side of where she lives in these apartments. But her mother says, you know, there's nothing over there. There's nothing on the other side of the door. It's bricked up. But then one day Coraline goes to the door and finds out that there is a passageway to the other side. She finds out that there is another mother and another father of her own on the other side that seem to be a little bit more appealing to her than her current parents. So she ends up getting new clothes, all this great food. Like, she's just pampered pretty much on the other side of this door. But then come to find out, if she wants to say, there is a pretty hefty price. So Coraline is now trapped in this web of lies, if you will, and this just turmoil. And so her kooky neighbors end up helping her out a little bit, and she has to save herself, save her family, and get back to her ordinary life. But this is such a good story. There are so many underlying messages in here. I could take this on the spiritual end of things and talk about how it relates with God and the devil in different parts of the story. I've done that. You can turn a spin on it with how it relates to children with scary stories, and why scary stories are good for children, about being brave and smart and not being scared of everything but tackling things head on. Like, there are just so many great things that you could talk about with this story. Like, it's just one of my favorites. The illustrations in all of these are just so good. It's one of my favorites. You just really can't go wrong with Coraline, and Coraline is really creepy. I'm telling you guys, if you want your kids to read this, read it with them, because it's probably going to be a little bit creepy for them, but it's so good. It's one of my favorite spooky season recommendations, so I highly recommend it. Back on the lighter end, I have another book that I just read this year, and it's called The Beast and the Bethany by Jack Meggett Phillips. So this is a story that is very reminiscent of something by maybe Roald Dahl or Lemony Snicket. It's very whimsical. It's kind of like dark humor a little bit. And it follows this 511-year-old man who is immortal, clearly. He still looks young, but he's 511. The way that this has happened is that he has this monster that lives in this mansion with him, and he's fed this monster over the years a number of different things. And it could start off with just a basic meal. It's gone from that to like circus monkeys. And this monster gives him elixir of life, essentially, as he takes care of him and feeds him. Well, this monster has gotten bigger and bigger and has grown an appetite for more things than he has eaten in the past. And now he has asked Ebenezer Tweezer, who is this 511-year-old man. Love his name, by the way. He has asked him for a child. And Ebenezer just cannot think about like giving him a child. So he's like, I will find the most rotten child there is. So that's when Bethany comes in. So he gets Bethany from this orphanage, and you know, it kind of just goes on from there, where Ebenezer is like, is this child worth feeding, or is this child, you know, actually as rotten as I think, or could she potentially be a friend? And it's just, I love the book. I gave it 4 stars. It is very whimsical. It is very just like odd and weird. Like I said, I feel like Roald Dahl and Lemony Snicket type stuff, especially Roald Dahl. I feel like this is just very, I don't know. This is just a really unique story. I think it's really cool. I gave it 4 stars. So if you want something a little bit more like dark humor, light, like it's still pretty creepy, but it is a little bit more on the humorous side, definitely check this one out. Then I have Midnight at the Barclay Hotel by Flora Bradley. I recently read this with my middle grade book club kiddos, and I think it's safe to say this is one of our new overall favorite reads for our book club. So I gave this one 5 stars. So if you want something a little bit spooky and paranormal, but something also a little bit lighter, you don't want to be too scared, this is a great book for you. If you like mysteries like Clue, this is basically a kid's Clue. So this story follows our main characters, JJ, Penny, and Emily, And JJ and his mom get this invitation to go to the Barclay Hotel. When they get there, there are all these other guests there as well. And it comes to find out Mr. Barclay has been murdered and his mom is a suspect. So he's trying to clear his mom's name, figure out who committed this murder. He's doing that along with his two new friends, Penny and Emily. Like I said, there's some paranormal aspects. There's some clue aspects. It's really great. There's like awesome illustrations in here as well. I mentioned that with just about every one of these middle grades, but it's so good. You have to mention it because there's just, I don't know, the illustrators nowadays in children's books is just impeccable. I feel like I've said that a lot, but yeah, this is a great story. Gave it 5 stars. There were some twists and turns along the way that I didn't see coming. I thought it was done really well. And yeah, I just think if you like Clue, if you want a good spooky mystery for this season, pick up Midnight at the Barclay Hotel. Next up, I have The Peculiar Incident on Shady Street by Lindsay Curry. I did just read this one recently as well, and I didn't rate it as highly, but I put it on this list because I feel like the audiobook really tainted my experience of reading this book. I feel like this would have been a 4-star read for me, so I'm gonna go ahead and add it because I feel like I'll read it again in the future and really enjoy it. But I did only rate this 3.5 stars. But let me tell you about it because this just might pique your interest. This is a story about a girl named Tessa Woodward, and Tessa has just moved from sunny Florida to rainy Chicago. She's not happy about it. She's obviously moving from a sunny place to a rainy place. She's homesick. She didn't get to bring her best friend along, so she's feeling a little bit lonely. And not to mention, she is now living in a seemingly haunted house. So Tess ends up trying to figure out what is going on with the mystery behind this house. There is flickering lights, there's weird drawings, there is a creepy ventriloquist dummy. Like, that's probably the creepiest part of the story for me. Well, I don't know. There's some pretty creepy parts, but she ends up making a few new friends, and they are trying to solve the mystery of what happened on Shady Street over 100 years ago. So this ended up being a really atmospheric read. Like I said, with the audiobook, I just really didn't like the narrator. I felt like it was a little too light and fluffy on the audio, but if I would have read this on my own, I would have been like probably really creeped out. And so yeah, I wanted to go ahead and recommend this one because I feel like it was really well done. It was very creepy, and it would be a great spooky read for this season. Next up, I have another, I don't want to say light. It is a little bit lighter, but it was still pretty creepy. This is a comic book, graphic novel, what have you. It is Zatanna and the House of Secrets by Matthew Cody, and it is part of the DC universe, but I didn't really know anything about Zatanna, and I'm not really a huge like superhero person. So as someone who is not really into that stuff, I still really enjoyed this and gave it 4 stars. So I wanted to make sure to recommend it here because I thought it was a really good graphic novel slash comic. I guess it's a comic, but it read more like a graphic novel. I don't know. I always get confused on those things. Anyways, so our main character is Zatanna. She lives in this house of secrets with her father. Her father is a professional magician, and she also has a bunny named Pocus, which I just think is the cutest thing. And she lives in this house, and the house has like magic and puzzles and mysterious doors. And it's the house that everybody talks about. And so one day, Zatanna comes home from school to find that her father is missing somewhere in this house. And she has no idea where he is, what's going on. There's something sinister going on, and that's kind of where the story goes. Like I said, I think this was a really good graphic novel. I gave it 4 stars. I would love to read more about Zatanna in this middle grade spooky atmosphere. I think it's really cool. I don't really like comic book type things, but this one definitely surprised me. So I think the artwork was really good. I think the story was really good. It was spooky. It was awesome. It was very Halloween-y. So this is definitely a great read for the season and one to pick up if you're looking for a quick graphic novel. The next book on my list is City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. Now, you guys have probably heard me talk a ton about this one as well because I love, love, love this series. So I also have Tunnel of Bones and Bridge of Souls on my shelves. I have not got to Bridge of Souls yet. That will be happening this year. But City of Ghosts follows Cassidy Blake. This is the Cassidy Blake series, and Cassidy Blake had a near-death experience, and ever since then, she can now see through the veil or see ghosts. Now, the funny thing about this is that Cassidy's parents are ghost hunters, and they have just been signed on for this new TV show where they will travel to the world's most haunted places and ghost hunt. Now, they don't know that Cassidy can see ghosts, and Cassidy can see ghosts and they can't, and all this fun stuff. Cassidy has a ghost best friend named Jacob, and this is just a wild ride. I love this story. The first book is probably still my favorite. All of them have been 5 stars. Well, the first 2 have been 5 stars for me so far. This one takes place in Edinburgh, Scotland. The second book takes place in the catacombs in Paris, and the third book takes place in New Orleans. So this one is really awesome, and let me just go ahead and tell you guys, if you get these books, I know, like, I have the hardcover back here, but the paperbacks of these are great because they have author Q&As and photos in the background. So all of the places that Cassidy visits in Edinburgh, there are pictures of in the back with little descriptions of like what they are and some history behind them. And I just think that's really awesome. It's a really cool feature in this book. So I love the paperback. So that's why I have multiple copies back here, because I want the paperbacks, but I also want the hardcover. So that's just me. This is a super creepy book with, I don't know, it's just the atmosphere. I feel like I'm gonna say the same thing for all of these, but it's very atmospheric. The story is just 10 out of 10. I love it. I love it so much. Please, please, please pick up this series if you haven't. This was one of my first spooky reads other than Coraline, and it's just top notch. Please pick up the Cassidy Blake series. Next up, I have another book that I've talked about a ton on my channel, which would be Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. Once again, this is the first book in a series. I also have Dead Voices back here, which was also really good, and I'm going to be reading Dark Waters pretty soon as well. So Small Spaces is about this trio of friends, Ollie, Coco, and Brian, who get into a bit of a spooky mess at this creepy farm with some creepy scarecrows. So Ollie ends up finding this book that this woman, she ends up finding this woman that is trying to throw away this book in this river or whatever. And Ollie loves books, and she's like, no, 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 let me have the book, please don't throw it away. And the woman's like, no, you can't have it, I have to get rid of it. And she ends up snatching it and taking it, and Ollie reads the book. The book is called Small Spaces. It's about something really creepy that happened between these two brothers years and years ago. And Ollie ends up taking a class field trip to this farm that just happens to be the setting of what happened in Small Spaces, the book, all these years ago. And so now there are some creepy scarecrows. There's a smiling man. This book is the book that I always say spooked me. Do not read this at night with a book light in the dark. Just don't do it. You're going to see things. You're going to hear things. It's going to freak you out. Just don't do it. This book was so scary. I will never look at scarecrows the same way again. Like, it was just so good. If you were looking for a book that is like, it's kind of like Goosebumps by R.L. Stine, but creepier, if you can imagine that. So if you want an even creepier Goosebumps, please pick this up. It's so, so good. The second book and the third book, they all follow the same characters, the three trio of friends throughout the whole series. But man, I really want to see an adaptation of this because, I mean, it would probably be like the Goosebumps shows, but I don't care. This is so good. One of my favorite spooky reads, so I highly recommend this one also. Next up, I have a little bit of a lighter read again. So this is Ghosts by Raina Telgemeier. This is one of my all-time favorite graphic novels. It's super sweet. It follows Katrina and her family. They have just moved to the coast of Northern California because her little sister Maya is sick. Now, Maya has cystic fibrosis, so this has cystic fibrosis representation in here. And as someone who does not have CF, I cannot speak from experience, but I feel like objectively, this probably is really good recommendation. It seems like it's really good recommendation from what I know of cystic fibrosis. I think it's done really well. And I think it's really cool that they add this as a feature in the story because a lot of kids may not know about this sickness. And so they end up having to move to California for that reason. And they're coming into California at the perfect time because Dia de los Muertos is going on. And so they get to kind of take part in this festival. There's some ghosts that might or might not show up. And it's just, Raina Telgemeier is just one of the best graphic novelists. I love her graphic novels. I love this one. I love Guts. I've read some more by her. I can't remember, but like, it's so good. Like, look at that artwork. Please pick this one up. One of my favorite pictures is the scene where they're like going into the festival, if I can find it. Okay, I can't find the exact picture, but this will do. Like, the artwork is just so stinking good. I love this so much. So yeah, definitely check out Ghosts if you're looking for a lighter, spooky read. It's still a little spooky, but it's a good family story. It has very good messages in here throughout. Great representation in my opinion, and I just think it's one of the best graphic novels that I've ever read. Also, I keep forgetting to mention like what I'm rating these books. All the books that I've talked about over the past few minutes that I haven't rated have been 5 stars, just to clarify. Next up, I have another graphic novel. So this one is Witches of Brooklyn by Sophie Escobar. This is a great witchy, spooky graphic novel. It has an impeccable message. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but please read this because it has such a good wholehearted, like heartwarming, like timely message. I can't do words today clearly, but it has a great message. But this is a story about a girl named Effie, and Effie has lost her mom, she's lost her house, and now she is having to move in with 2 aunts that she has never met before, so they are complete strangers to her. She moves into this house. They're a little bit odd. So not only are they strangers to her, but they are strange in general. And she comes to find out that her family actually is a part of a lineage of witches. I feel like that is a theme in a lot of books that I like. But anyways, so they end up dealing with that. She is learning about magic and dealing with a cursed pop star. And yeah, there's just a great message in this book. If you're looking for a little bit lighter of a read, once again, this is still a great like witchy autumnal read. So I highly recommend picking this one up. This was 5 stars for me, and I can't wait to read the second book in the series. Getting back on the spooky train, we have Night Books by J.A. White. Now, this book just had a Netflix adaptation come out. I have watched it. Go watch it. Read the book first, then watch it. But this book is so good. It's one of my favorites. If you like, now look, I was just saying in a video that I didn't like fairy tale stuff anymore, and this has a little bit of a dark fairy tale feel, but this is like my exception. I love this book. So if you like dark fairy tales, folklore kind of deal, Hansel and Gretel, what else, like Arabian Nights kind of deal with some spooky witches and magic and creepiness, like, and books, please read this, because oh my goodness, this is such a good book. So this book follows Alex, and Alex sneaks out in the middle of the night to go burn some books that he writes called Night Books, and these books have some scary stories of his that he writes. Don't really know at first why Alex is doing this, but he gets kind of sidetracked as he's going down. He gets lured into this witch's apartment and is trapped there, and supposedly there's no way out. And he ends up meeting this girl, I always forget her name, named Yasmin, and Yasmin tells him she's been trapped there forever, there's no way out, and they are trapped by the witch Natasha, and the only way for Alex to survive is if he tells Natasha a story every night, which is kind of the Arabian Nights feel of it. Obviously him being trapped is kind of the Hansel and Gretel part of it. But yeah, this is such a good story. You've got Alex's stories dispersed throughout, so like I actually just flipped to a page, The Lost Dog. You've got, I don't even know, there's a creepy cat that disappears and shows up in random places. It's just, I don't know. I feel like my words are just not doing these books justice today, but like, this is one of the best books. It's so good. It's so good. And then the Netflix adaptation is also really good. I was questionable about it because when I saw the trailer, I was like, this looks kind of hokey. But then I watched it, and it's pretty spooky, and I liked it. And some of my middle grade kiddos that actually read this book on Facebook Live with some of my kiddos that are now in my middle grade book club, they had watched it, or one of my kiddos watched it, and his mom was even like, I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. And so yeah, I think it was really good. So I would highly recommend reading the book and then giving the Netflix adaptation a go. All right, I've got 2 more books here. So along the same lines of witchy, lighthearted, well, I don't want to say lighthearted, but witchy, lighter, not as spooky books. Again, we have The OK Witch by Emma Steinkellner, which once again, one of my favorites. This is my favorite graphic novel of all time right now, okay? So we've got 13-year-old Moth, and Moth loves all things witchy. She wants to be a witch. She's kind of an outcast at school. And guess what? She ends up finding out that she's part of a lineage of witches. Here we go again. So she ends up, well, I don't want to say too much more. There's a talking cat. This gives me Salem Witch Trials vibes, Halloween Town vibes. That's all you need to know. The artwork is impeccable. The story is great. I love Emma Steinkellner. I read the second book in the series. It was also really great. I still like the first one the best, but it was impeccable. Impeccable. That is my word of the day. I keep using that. Anyways, it was great. It was great. It was phenomenal. It was wonderful. Please pick this up. If you like graphic novels, even if you don't like graphic novels, please pick this up because it's so good. I love The OK Witch. It's just a warm hug in a book. And it's kind of spooky in parts, but it's just so good. So please read The OK Witch. This is 5 stars all the way around. Shoot, it's probably 6 out of 5 stars. So please pick up The OK Witch. And now we're down to the last book. It is another spooky book. So we have The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This is the same author as Coraline, and this book is, oh, it's so good. It's so creepy. This is another one of the books where I have the illustrated version and I have the graphic novels. And I will say that when I first read this book, there were a couple of things that confused me a little bit. I think that was just a me thing, not in general, it's confusing to people, but I was confused by a couple of things, not like story plots, but just like, I don't know. Anyways, then I read the graphic novels and I was like, oh my gosh, this just made me love the book so much more. Because I originally gave this book 4 stars, but I gave the graphic novels 5 stars. So yeah. Anyways, this is a book about a boy named Bod, and Bod is the survivor of his family who was murdered Yes, this is a middle grade, and at the very beginning there's a murder, but I promise it gets better from there. So his family was murdered. He escaped when he was a baby. He crawled off to the nearest graveyard, and he ends up being raised by ghosts. So his name is Nobody Owens. He goes by Bod, and he's being raised in a graveyard by ghosts. And he's got Silas, who is kind of like the keeper of the graveyard that kind of looks out for Bod. And all this spooky, creepy stuff happens. Like, I just don't want to say anything more than that, but the man Jack is the one who kind of like he murdered his family. The man Jack murdered his family, and the man Jack is still looking for Bod because he knows that Bod got away. So he's kind of trying to be kept safe by the ghosts in the graveyard from the man Jack, but then he also is kind of coming to an age where he needs to explore the world and be with the humans. And so this is a great coming of age story. It's super creepy. It's very heartwarming as well. It's so good. It's just so good. Neil Gaiman does spooky really well. Oh, I just passed a picture I want to show you. Let's see. That wasn't it. But yeah, illustrations, once again, I mean, they're just great. I love it. I love it so much. So if you were looking for another good spooky book, I mean, obviously that's why you're here, right? Because spooky middle grade. Here we go. There's, I believe, is this Silas? Doesn't look like Silas. I was going to say this is Silas and Bod. But yeah, so here's Silas and Bod. Please read this. And if you read this, I don't know, you could even read just the graphic novels, but I love both. They're so good. Love Neil Gaiman, love the spooky vibes. But yeah, 5 out of 5 stars overall experience for the whole like illustrated version, this version, and the graphic novels. Like, it's just so good. All right, y'all, that is all of the spooky books that I have for you today. So like I said, some of those were a little bit lighter. They were witchy, they were ghosty, they were still fall. And then some of them were a little bit more on the creepy end. But hopefully you found something that you had not heard of before, that you haven't picked up yet. And hopefully I convinced you to pick some of these up, because these are just peak graphic novels, peak middle grade books, peak spooky season reads. Like, please pick up some of these. And if you've read them, or if you're gonna read them, please let me know in the comments. Like, come back and let me know what you think. If you actually don't like any of these, I would love to know why, just because, like, good conversation. But yeah, I love all these books so much. They hold a very dear place in my heart. I love spooky middle grade books. I will always love spooky middle grade books. This is just one of my favorite things. It's my niche in books, I guess. And so yeah, I wanted to make sure I gave you guys a spooky middle grade book recommendation video. So I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe sometime in the future, I will do another one, a part 2, maybe next year, give you guys some more spooky middle grade recommendations. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, friends.